Hi, good evening.
Hi.
I think it's a whole 10:30. So we have been talking about making this video for a while, and I think maybe for me it was pushing off a little bit farther, but today I got a message about a post I made, I don't know, a couple weeks ago. And I don't think sometimes you realize that the things that you share could possibly have an impact on somebody else's life. But basically, there's a family that reached out to us that for 7 years, they have fought what we went through for 4 or 5 months. And as hard as that's been, for the first time, they feel like there's some hope. So we just kind of wanted to, now I'm going to give you a couple of disclaimers. Number one, this is going to sound crazy. It'll be one of the wildest things you've ever heard. At the end of this, you may think we're crazy. That's okay.
We probably are.
We probably are. We probably do have PTSD and will forever, and that's okay. But the hope here is that through what we've been through, if we can give anybody just a little bit of hope and encouragement to know that it's maybe not them, that it's maybe not their kid.
And you're not alone.
And you're not alone. We've had people reach out to us that have lived through this, and they're like, we felt like we were on an island all by ourselves. So would you like to start?
Yeah.
How we ended up here?
So a couple of weeks before Christmas, 2023
Yeah.
would have been, everybody in our house got sick. I think I was the only one. Mallory and I were the only one that were not sick. Drew was sick, pretty much had COVID.
Oh my gosh.
Had COVID.
Sickest I've been in a very long time.
Jen, who is pretty much our bonus daughter, she was sick and had COVID. And Owen was sick and had the flu, which at the time we thought was just the flu.
The dog is like crawling under her bowl. Yeah.
So he was really, really sick. Owen was probably the sickest of all of everybody. I went to the doctor with him, found out they had the flu, and of course, just as usual, like, all right, we got to ride this out because it's the flu. There's nothing you can do. Everybody at school had it, and we were just trying to make it to Christmas break so that we could just get well. So Christmas comes around. He's finally up and moving around by Christmas, but he wouldn't move out of his bed. We had to make him get up. He would just sleep all day long and just had no energy whatsoever. Wouldn't eat, nothing. Christmas finally comes. He's trying to be himself. I'm chalking everything up to he's been sick. He doesn't feel well. He's not back with us yet. He's just not 100%. Time gets going on. He's talking about his stomach hurting constantly. And he would do this fanning thing, which was driving all of us crazy.
Oh my gosh. And that's the hard part, when you can't figure out what's going on, and then everything we did, it was like, I'm hot.
Yes, he'd say I'm hot, and then we're just thinking it's very dramatic and all.
And made up. I mean, to be honest with you, it really felt made up in the beginning. And
so, I'm just, even people are kind of noticing at Christmas, like, is Owen okay? I'm like, he's just been sick. He's a little more withdrawn. Owen is very much likes to be the center of attention, and he was not trying to be at all. He was playing on his iPad, and there was new toys all around. So from Christmas, and again, I'm not thinking about it. We went on a Christmas trip, which we like to do. He's doing the I'm hot thing. He's taking his shirt off. It's freezing cold outside. He's hot flashes is all I could call it. And I didn't even know what was wrong with him. He's losing weight because he's not eating well. It's getting closer to time for us to go back to school. And, I'm not thinking anything. I'm just not thinking anything.
No, it's just he's sick and he's overly dramatic is where we kind of landed on this.
So, that was part of it.
He gets it honest.
Yeah.
I don't know.
During that break, we did decide, all right, he's talking about the stomach issue for long enough. Let's go ahead and talk to the pediatrician. So she went ahead, and I told her all the things he was doing, and she did some blood work. Well, while we were at the office that day, she was like, his throat is really red. So she swabbed him, and it came back that he had strep throat. I had no clue he had strep throat because he had not said anything about his throat hurting or nothing. He had no fever anymore. That was long gone. And so I didn't think anything of it. We decide they're going to order a heart monitor for him to wear. Like, we're checking everything. We're going to just check this kid out because the pediatrician's like, I don't know. Let's do some blood work. They did call us back that all of his titers were high with mono, strep, and mycoplasma pneumonia, and all this stuff were super high in his blood. But they were thinking the strep, was causing a lot of the problems, or, just that maybe that might be why his stomach was hurting and things like that. So she sets us up with a GI doctor for him even. And so we're just trying to go down all of these avenues.
At the end of April.
Well, yeah, but...
Long way away.
So we're just trying to find some answers. We just need something for him because we don't want to do nothing. So, and he's not eating right. And the kid is losing weight. He was just wasting away. And so we get the blood work, all that, we do the heart monitor, everything. And January 9th rolls around, I think it was, and we have to go back to school. Everything changed. I work at the school that he's at, so he never really loved school, let's just be honest. But he would go. And he would just say, I don't want to go to school, and he would go. That day, something was different. He woke up that morning, I can't go, I can't do it. We get to the school, he starts panicking and telling me I can't walk in this door, I can't do it, I can't do it, I can't do it, I can't do it. I pretty much do the mom teacher thing, and I drug him to class and pushed him through the door because he's just being dramatic. And I push him in the door, and he's screaming, crying, which is not normal because he's in 2nd grade. That was more normal when he was in kindergarten to be crying after a break or something like that, but he would get over it quick. And finally he gets over it throughout the day, but he gets home and he's talking about his stomach hurting, all the things still. And the next day we go again. By January the 11th, he has already told his teacher some really terrible things to her face. She's a beautiful person that we love, and he loves her, and he's saying some very horrible things that he would never say.
And I'll interject because here's the part of this that makes this very real. If you're living through this and you have a kid that's saying these things, this is what's really important to look for. And it was, I hate you. I hate my teacher. I'm going to punch the school down.
You're the worst teacher in the world. And he didn't mean any of the things he was saying. And I'm just telling her he doesn't mean it. I don't know why he's saying this. And we ended up in the emergency room that day because he started having a panic attack. Or by January 11th, we're in the emergency room because he's having a panic attack, telling me his heart's hurting, he can't breathe. He just wants to go to the emergency room. So I'm like, something is wrong. We got to go. So we go. I do talk to them about the titers are high in his blood. I don't know what that means. I don't know if that means anything. I said, I know he had strep throat. I'm still going, I don't know. They chalk it up to he has situational anxiety.
And now, to interject there, here's the thing. We talk to, if you've ever been to the Children's Hospital, and look, they're great at a lot of things. I have no issues with Children's Hospital. This is really weird, what we've been through. And so we tell the story to, I don't know, I felt like 30 people. And everybody comes in and you're explaining what's happening. And then finally the last guy comes in, and I guess he's like, you think about Mario like the big boss, he's Bowser or something. And he comes in and he says, hey guys, I just don't really understand what's happening here. So we go through the whole story again. And he stops and he said, I really feel like this is situational anxiety. And I said, that's a great idea. And I can understand why you would say that. But here's the problem. It's not just when we're doing stuff that he doesn't want to do. And I understand that it feels that way because you're thinking about school, you're thinking about going to church, things he loves, all the stuff that he really enjoys, he doesn't want to do. We would have Nerf wars at night, and then he would have these, all of a sudden, I'm hot. And so
yeah,
it's like, I hear you that you're saying situational anxiety, and that sounds good. It's just not all the way there. But that's the answer we got, and, wish you well and good luck.
Well, so we leave the hospital with this situational anxiety. They write him Pepsid type medicine for his stomach, which did absolutely nothing because his stomach was hurting all the time. and which was anxiety. I mean, it was this,
Yes.
or strep.
Anxiety is real, and
or
we
strep in
do know
his
that's part of
stomach
this
as well. So I go back to the school, and Jen, she's like, I don't know if I should show you this, but I think I would like to. And she shows me something called PANDAS, which now I don't know what it all stands for.
I do. It stands for Pediatric Autoimmune Neuropsychiatric Disorder Associated with Streptococcus. That's what it stands for.
I read over it, and I just kind of was like, I don't know. I sent it to Drew. I sent it to my mom. My mom says anything's possible, and I don't think you just would look at it.
So to back up for 1 second, at school, when Owen has this crazy breakdown, Sarah walks out one day, and it was a counselor, maybe? He said, I know what this is. It's PANDAS.
Well, it was another teacher.
Yeah, and so and it was just
he had strep.
kind of in passing. And so that word was thrown to me the first time. I dismissed it. The second time, Jen took a lot of time to do the research on every symptom that there was. And so Sarah, and I remember the day she sent me the article, because when I tell you, we were reeling trying to figure out what was going on. And so Sarah sent me again an article, and she was like, could it be PANDAS?
So much so, I called the pediatrician and asked if, can a child have strep and it change their personality? And she said, absolutely, we have seen that before. She didn't call it PANDAS. They didn't call it PANDAS, which I understand why now, but we'll get to that.
Yeah, we'll get there.
So we now have the word PANDAS in our mind, but we're still not quite sold on it, just because it was too scary.
I've still not even read it.
Yeah, I did, but I mean, it was too scary for me, because it looked like that it can be permanent and things like that. And I was thinking, and I was also reading through, and at the time, I thought he didn't have all the symptoms. Looking back, he had every single one of them. So as the week goes on, the next week, school is getting harder and harder. We cannot go. I can't get him in my car in the morning. I cannot physically put him in the car. I cannot physically get him into school. And we decide to, if you can go to school every day this week, we'll go to the Children's Museum. That's what he wanted to do. So he's working for that, because I'm also a special education teacher. So I'm like, we work for something. So let's work for this. And it was what he chose. Well, he went to school that week. It wasn't beautiful, but he went, and it was not pretty. And by the time we got to the Children's Museum that weekend, it was a nightmare. He couldn't go in the building.
It was a disaster.
He could not go in. He was panicking, and it took 30 minutes for him finally to decide he should go in. And I think y'all went to go play, and it's just me and him, and I'm trying to talk to somebody. He's telling me, we need to leave, we need to leave, we need to leave, we need to leave, we need to leave. He won't stop saying those words, and I'm like, we're not leaving, we're in here now. Finally, he relaxes and he plays, and he looks like himself, and he's playing. So I'm thinking, all right, this is not situational anxiety. He's playing with people. He's playing with kids. He doesn't care that they're around him. He's not afraid of people. He had to get over the initial fear. So the next week, every night we're trying to plan things. We're trying to plan something for him to do. He's now starting to tell me that his legs don't work sometimes, and he would just fall into the floor. And I'm like, your legs do work, and you're being dramatic. Or he'd fall out of a chair, or he'd say, I'm dizzy. We decided to go to the park one afternoon and take our bikes and ride. And he was excited about it. He's sitting at the table eating applesauce. And then he tells me, I'm allergic to applesauce. It's going to kill me. I'm going to die. And I'm allergic. I'm allergic. And he falls into the floor. And I'm like, you're not allergic to anything. You're fine. Like, stop. And everything just went really bad from there. So at this point, Jen and I were here. I don't think you were here yet. And Mallory was outside jumping on the trampoline because she couldn't handle being in here.
Well, hang on.
Yeah.
But before that, so again, you would have to understand that there was a big issue with the stomach. I was convinced, and when I tell you convinced, I mean with everything I had in me, that it was either the anxiety was causing the stomach issues, or the stomach issues were causing the anxiety. It had to be one or the other. And so I remember it was a nightmare trying to get him to school. I walked in one morning, I looked at Sarah, and we're just trying to wrangle him. And I looked at her and I said, I'm about to make a stupid plea on Facebook, and I'm about to offer $10,000 to anybody that can get us in to see a pediatric GI. Because when I tell you, there was a moment of absolute desperation. I didn't care what it cost. I didn't care how to get there. we just needed to see somebody. And so that was on a Monday. And Sarah was like, hang on before you do that. And so she calls, was it Happy Tummies?
Yeah.
They are remarkable. And they were like, hey, we don't have anything. Well,
Our pediatrician got us in, yeah.
within like a couple of minutes, they call back.
Like,
We had a cancellation, which was fantastic. And it's a God moment. And there are so many through this that it took us a minute to catch. Hindsight is amazing. It's a really cool thing. So that was on a Tuesday. Okay, Tuesday night, we go see the doctor, and she's like, look, I can't tell. He feels fine. We need to see inside. So what does that mean? Scope. When can you do it? Thursday. Before I even looked at Sarah, I said, book it.
yeah, so we're just saying yes.
Yeah. So we get home that was Tuesday night, and he's sitting on the couch, and all of a sudden he starts moving his head in circles, and it was crazy.
He's saying, I
looking.
can't stop.
I'm so dizzy. I'm dizzy. And I said, well, you would be if your head's doing this.
But at this point is where, so Jen.
We crashed off
yeah,
of the mountain.
Our bonus daughter went to her room, and she is really watching videos now of children with pandas. And she starts actually crying and comes back in the room because she's watching a video of a kid having, which we now understand is like a raging fit with pandas and a flare. And we're living it in the living room with Owen, who has never seen the videos. He doesn't know that he's doing exactly the same thing as the child on the video. And then at this point, I don't know if it was this night or the next night, but he tells us that he's here.
False.
Okay.
It was the next night. So this night, when he's moving his head around, and again, I still have not for the first time even remotely looked at what PANDAS is. I have refused. I don't want to be a doctor. I'm not trying to be a doctor. I don't want to tell anybody. They don't know what they're doing. And so I look over, and Sarah's just holding Owen, and she's got his head right in her chest, just trying to get him because, again, he's
trying to make him stop.
I'm busy. And so she holds him, and I pick up my phone after she kind of gets him calm, and I just start playing a word game. Because I'm checking out for a minute. I don't want to think because my life is in shambles. Nothing makes sense. And then I turn and look, and she's sobbing. I'm going to make it through this. So I look at her, and she's crying. And I said, why are you crying? She said, I'm watching a kid on the phone that has pandas. It's Owen. So for the first time, I pull out my phone and I Google what is pandas. And I start reading the list of stuff, and it's insane because when I tell you it is everything on the list, it's extreme onset anxiety, it's extreme onset OCD, it's crazy baby talk out of nowhere, it's, there's a list of stuff. And when I went through, we had a kid who was all of a sudden terrified to flush the toilet. I know that sounds ridiculous.
Like he still
couldn't do it.
He still doesn't want to, but he'll go out of the bathroom. He's afraid it's going to flood.
Baby steps. So the next morning, I go to the gym. I go to the gym every morning for the last couple of years. I leave at 5:30. I get home, or 5:50. I get home about 7. The phone rings while I'm at the gym. That can only mean one thing when the phone rings if I'm at the gym. Something bad has happened. And so Sarah calls and she said, hey, I think we need to go back to the ER.
He was so dizzy.
He was so dizzy. She said his eyes are
going back
strange.
and forth, and he couldn't make them stop. And he's telling me, I can't stop it. I can't stop it. I can't stop it. I don't know why I can't stop it. So we go back to the ER.
We go back to the ER. And this time, for the first time, we kind of float the idea of pandas. We may as well
they didn't. They weren't ugly about it.
They weren't ugly. No. Please don't misunderstand that. But it's almost like this is a foreign term to a lot of people. Well, what is pandas? The bear? I've been asked that a few times.
They told us it's hard to diagnose. They told us we needed to have a previous diagnosis of OCD. They told us we needed to have, he's going to have to see a psychiatrist and all this stuff. And so we're just kind of like, okay. We don't know. And of course, once we get to the hospital, he's fine.
And the hard part is this. We know our child. We know him very well. we're not disconnected parents that don't pay attention to our children or like them. We really like our kids. And so,
and Owen can tell you everything that's wrong with him. Like he can tell you, he will tell you everything that's hurting, everything that's bothering him, and like he still does. Like,
but it's hard to walk in. But it's hard to walk into a strange place where nobody knows you, and they don't know your kid, and they don't know his normal personality. I mean, we've had a kid for the last. I mean, at this point, he was almost 8. So for almost 8 years, we've had a kid who is fantastic. He is, when I tell you he's an encourager, he's a positive kid. It is one of my favorite things about him is he is such an encourager. He always is in a good mood. He's outside. He's into everything. We lost our kid in the blink of an eye. Gone. It's the freakiest thing I've ever seen.
But I will say at the ER this time, I feel like they're doing something.
Yes.
They started doing some tests on, like they did was it a CT?
We did a CT scan, an EEG, and an EKG.
Yeah, everything comes back normal. Nothing is wrong. Which I'm sad because I'm like, I want you to find something wrong so we can fix it. But at the same time, I'm relieved because there's nothing wrong. They don't see anything in his brain because I'm like, something's wrong with his brain. That is what we're looking at. Like something is not right. So I kept thinking there's going to be something in there. They're going to see something.
So we leave, they're like, hey, look, we don't really know. And that's hard. That's hard as a parent when I have brought my child to you.
To fix.
And you didn't do it. So
they tell us we need to go to we're going to need to go to the K clinic, which is fine.
Which is a psychiatric clinic.
It's a great place.
It's a great place. We weren't opposed to it. We were kind of working on getting that set up. I get them home and I said, look, I have to work. I feel so behind because when I tell you, it's not like a moment during the day where it's like 5 minutes in your life feels like it sucks. It is complete upside down all day long, every day. There is no normal whatsoever. So I get them home, I get them situated, I go do my thing. I was just leaving an appointment and I called Sarah. It was like, I don't know, 4:30 or 5. And I said, hey, I'm about 30 minutes from home. And
there was a thing that we were supposed to go to that night. I was supposed
that
to
I was
go
the
with
next
you.
night.
Yeah. Oh, okay.
Yeah. So
my brain doesn't work anymore.
She called while we're talking on the phone. She said, "Hey, look, can we have a picnic? Can we go ride bikes? Can we do anything that feels normal?" And I said, "Yes, we can do we can do all. Let's do it." So I'm driving home, and I feel like maybe the clouds have opened up just a little bit. There's a little bit of sunlight shining through.
Because we had already been at the ER that morning, right?
Yes, this is the morning. We went to the ER this morning, and I'm thinking, thank God we're getting a break. I'm 5 minutes from the house, and the phone rings. There is panic on the other side of the phone. Where are you right now? I'm like 5 minutes away. Get here as fast as you can. Okay?
Because we need to go back to the ER.
I fly home.
Which I was told by a nurse. I did call a nurse first before I called you.
When I pull into the driveway, the scene, if I can set this for you, is mass chaos. All 3 girls are standing in the driveway. Sarah has Owen, and she's holding him by the waist, and he has his hands in her chest, and he is pushing as hard as he can, and he just keeps saying, "I don't want to hurt you. I don't want to hurt you. I don't want to hurt you." Okay, I was a little freaked out anyways, so I grab him, and I'm trying to get his arms, where I can hold him close to me so he's not pushing on me. And then I hear the scariest words I have ever heard in my entire life that will stick with me until the day that I die. Sarah said, "He said he heard a voice." And I lost it.
And said the voice was telling him to hurt all of us, and the voice was telling him to do bad things and telling him to act the way he was acting, and that he couldn't stop it, and the voice would not stop.
So I stood in my driveway holding my son, crying like a baby. And so Sarah calls the pediatrician people, and they're like, "Go back to the ER." So we go back.
Also, the lady was new. She's never worked at a pediatric office.
Never worked there. So we go back to the ER, and they're like, "You guys just here?" Yes. And as we're pulling in the parking lot, to give you a little more context, it's like he flips over to some weird child that I don't know, And he looks at me and he's like, if you love me, you won't take me here. And he starts trying to bargain. And I said, baby, I love you, and that's why I am taking you here. And he just keeps going.
His eyes are huge. Like, the pupils are huge. Like, it changes his look even.
It's not even like we're looking at our child.
No.
He's gone. And that's what we've noticed through the whole thing. It's like, done. So we go in the ER, and they're like...
And we're telling them, like, he's hearing a voice.
Oh,
so
yeah.
at this point, we're like...
And that makes you feel like the star parents, because your initial thought is, they're going to take our freaking kid from us. Because either A, they think he's nuts, or B, they think we're nuts.
Yeah, or that we've done something. And, of course, they take me in the hall, and they're like, has he been abused? And I'm like, no. And I said, and if anything, he has not even been punished in quite a while, because I do not know how to even discipline him right now. I got to be quite honest. I don't even know. I said, he hasn't had a spanking. He hasn't had anything. I said, not grounded, not taking anything from him. I said, he's really been living his best life. And I said, and
his best life
never.
actually was his worst
worst life. Yeah. But I mean, like, otherwise, like, he's been getting away with everything. So then they bring in someone from the K clinic to talk with us. And of course, she asks him, you know, do you want your parents here, or do you want them to leave? And he's like, I want them here. I don't want them to go. And so she does talk with us, and she talks with him, and, you know, she thinks that she's getting to the bottom of it a little bit, like with maybe it's something at school. But I'm like, I said, he's in second grade, and, you know, it could be this friend. It could be this friend. I'm like, they're best friends. I was like, or they're this, it's not that. Like, I'm telling you, it's not that. So she took me to a room, and of course I'm telling her, I said, we think it could possibly be PANDAS. I will say, she told me, she's like, it's not out of the question. You know, she's very professional, and she's just like, we need to see him in the K clinic. He's going to need to see a psychiatrist and all these things. And I'm just sitting there thinking, this will get me nowhere. Because I had already had been told, if you think he's going to hurt himself or someone else, you're going to have to take him somewhere and leave him. And I can't. I couldn't do that. I understand what they're meaning, and for his safety and all the things. But I mean, I couldn't do that. And I know there are people that have had to, and my heart goes out to them, because I know that sometimes you have to do what you have to do. But at the time, I was like, I can't do that. That is out of the question.
Now, they knew that the next day we were having the stomach scope. And again, at this point, I am still dang convinced the stomach has something to do with all this crap. So they're like, look, just take him home, go have the stomach scope, and go from there. So we get him home. Never did I dream it was going to be like taking freaking Chucky to...
We wrestled him to
It was awful.
To the hospital for his
Awful.
stomach scope. He talked about wanting to go to juvie. My 8-year-old kid, who I don't even know if he knows what juvie is, he's telling us horrible things. The lady walking us is like just looking at us, and I'm like, I don't know what's wrong. We're hoping he's in pain. Like, that's the only thing I can think of. We get him in the room. He's saying very threatening things.
Oh, he's the next person that walks through that door.
And he's a little bitty thing. And I'm like, you're not going to do anything. Yes, I am. And he's saying all that. But as soon as people would walk in, his demeanor would change, and he'd come over, mama, mama, mama. And then they would leave, and
Chucky's back.
And he would just come right back, and I'm going to go through that wall. I'm going to put my head through the wall. I'm going to do all these things. I'm going to this. And I'm like, please God, somebody come and put some medicine to put this kid to sleep right now, because he's not going to stop saying these things. Like, I don't know. And I need him to be better. They come, they take him. I've told them all, I was like, I don't know what he's going to say to y'all. But they're getting back there, they come back. He was the most pleasant thing. I'm like,
shocking.
Yeah, I'm like, really? They're like, he was so sweet. Well, now we know it was the anesthesia was helping some of the things that were going on in his body. We know that now, but I didn't know it then. Of course, that night was one of the worst.
Well,
yeah.
So we left.
Well, as we're there, they tell us, they come back with the stomach scope, and
it's great.
Absolutely nothing
I've
wrong.
never been so disappointed in a good report in all my life.
Which sounds horrible, but
what that means is, now that they're saying the stomach scope is great, here's what that means. You're back to square one.
There's nothing wrong with him, like physically that you can see wrong with him, and we know that there's something wrong.
The night before in the ER, one of the nurses was like, well, we don't know if we need to call a neurologist or if we need to call a psychiatrist. And through tears, I said, you can call everybody you can think of. I don't care what it costs. I don't care how we get there. You can have anything you want to help us fix our son. And so after the stomach scope, we get them home, and we had a thing with my company. And
I was like, I can't go. I can't leave.
I didn't want to go, and Sarah's like,
that's another thing is
you
Owen
need to go.
Couldn't leave me. He did not want to be away from me, and this is a telltale sign. Now I know that he was never like that. Like when he was little bitty, but no, he'd go do stuff. He'd buy mama, and would not leave my side. Didn't want me out of his view, pretty much. So this is Thursday night. So Tuesday night we had the craziness. Wednesday morning we went to the ER. Wednesday night we went to the ER. Thursday morning we had a stomach scope. Thursday night I get home because I go to the thing. I've not heard anything crazy. And I'm thinking maybe we're okay. Maybe he's just exhausted. But we have decided by this point we're not going back to the ER.
Oh yeah,
we've decided.
Yeah. I mean, if you're maimed,
if I'm bleeding,
go.
I'll go. But we're not going back because I'm not going to have somebody else tell me that we need to put him somewhere. So I just decided we'll deal with it at home.
So Thursday night, I go. Everything's good. I feel like life's kind of catching back on. And then I talked to an amazing human being who is a realtor as well. And she lived through this 10 or 12 years ago. And so I was bearing my soul to her, trying to figure out what was going on. And she was listening, and she was just about to go into her story. And then I pulled up in my driveway. And when I pull up in my driveway, I think it was Mallory comes running outside.
No, she wasn't here.
Was
she
it
wasn't
so?
Here that night.
So Jen, tears, come inside as fast as you can. And I thought, you've got to be kidding me. There's no freaking way we're doing this again. And I walk inside, and what I come into is, was your mom here?
Yes.
Yeah. So your mom and Jen. And they have pulled everything in the living room out.
He's tearing the living room apart.
I walk in, and he's got a pillow, and he's just slamming it as hard as he can. And don't really know what happened. Don't know what set him off.
He's just like, well, now I know anesthesia.
Yeah, mad at the world. And so Sarah's like, hey, you know what? You got a little frustrated earlier. Let's go jump it out on the trampoline. So she takes him to the trampoline, and I'm trying to figure out
I'm just trying to get energy out of him. I'm thinking that he's the anesthesia in him. He's having this raging fit again, and he's hearing the voice because he's telling us, I hear it, I hear it, I hear the voice, I hear the voice. And I'm like, then let's go outside and where maybe we can get rid of this voice. I don't know what to do.
So he's on the trampoline, and that goes well for about 45 seconds. And then he lays on the ground, and he's grabbing his hands, and he is like, everything he's got in him, he's pulling his hands. And he keeps saying, my brain is telling me to do this. My brain's telling me to hurt somebody. My brain's telling me to hurt something. Well, I thought, well, I ain't chancing this. So I pick him up and I grab him, and I've got him in a bear hug. And I will be very honest with you right now. At this point, I don't know what in the world is happening in our life, but I'm convinced at this very moment, there's a chance he's possessed. Now, I know that sounds crazy.
It looked everything like it.
When I tell you this is just us being real, you can judge us if you want to. I really don't give a crap. My hope here, again, is that if anybody is living this or knows somebody that's living this, because I have talked to probably 7 different families that are living the same hell that we went through, if we can give them a little bit of hope that there can be light at the back end of this, yay.
Yeah.
So now, if my neighbors were outside,
and I'm sure they were. I'm sure our neighbors have seen a show.
I can assure you, they definitely think I'm nuts, because I'll let a lot of things roll. But I'm not going to let the possibility of my children, my family, be possessed. Again, I know that sounds crazy. But if you heard and saw it, when I tell you I'm holding him tight.
And he's strong.
He is freaking strong.
Very strong. And
so, he just keeps saying my brain, and it's like, no, I'm praying that out. We ain't doing this. And so Sarah has pretty much figured out, he's not possessed.
There was a few minutes that I really thought he was, and I came inside and I lost it, and I laid on the ground crying. We called our pastor and his wife.
It was like, please call
10
them.
o'clock at night. They came to our house. Because, I mean, I think any of you would have done the same to have your child prayed over and get this demon out of him, because that's what it sounds like. Because we're telling him, Owen, just say the name of Jesus. And he says, I can't say that name. My brain won't let me. And then he says, I said, just say Jesus, say Jesus. I cannot say that name. My brain tells me, brain. And he wouldn't stop saying that. And at this point, I think somewhere in that moment, I'm like, I know, I mean, like, I don't want to get all up in it, but I know that there's something this is not demon possessed child, because it's not coming out and it's not responding.
Well, crap, I wasn't willing to take a chance.
But that's what I'm saying is I had done a little more research.
But again,
at this point
our neighbors may have us all committed.
I know, but the thing is, we did what we felt like we needed to do.
That's right.
The pastor and his wife came and they prayed over him just to help him calm. They both were in agreement with all of us at that point. We know he's not demon possessed. There's something going on.
Now, to interject here, and this is one of those God moments, because we have a friend who has a daughter that is OCD. Now, part of PANDAS has to do with extreme onset of OCD. So when the story was conveyed, the daughter said, I know exactly what he means. Basically, the voice may not have necessarily ever been a voice. It was simply the fact that the OCD kicked in and said, do this, do this, do this. And
it was his brain. He was telling us,
it was
it's
his
my brain. And so his brain was telling him these things, but it was not an actual audible voice. But to him, it sounded like it. So it makes sense now.
Yes.
And now he'll even say, like, he started to say my brain. He stopped saying the voice. He did stop saying the voice and started saying that. So at this point, we just know that
our life is over.
It's over. Like,
I mean, honestly, everything is gone. We're freaking screwed. Life is done.
And we had several fits like this that we would deal with, and that sometimes he would maybe take Mallory and leave because, like I said, I work in the special education world, so I do see a lot of things sometimes. And I mean, not going into detail there, but even though when it's your own kid, it's really hard. I did know all I need to do is when he's in this fit is I need to keep him safe. So I'm going to deal with a lot, and I would end up sweaty because I'm having to hold on to him so that he does not hurt me or anyone else. He never did hurt anybody on purpose.
No, absolutely not.
On purpose, other than movements that he would do that would hurt you just because you might be in the way of it.
But a godsend, again, I could write a book on all the things that I have seen God do through this. And one of those is what Sarah, I am eternally grateful. I love my wife so very much. Long before this ever happened, and I've always thought she was a rock star. We have been living in this weird, who would break next? Who's the one that's going to crumble? And I mean, I sat down with Mallory one night and I said, hey baby, we need to talk about this. I need you to understand our life is upside down. And we still love you. And there's going to be times you're mad. You can be mad. There's going to be times that you're really sad. And you can be sad. Whatever emotion that you're feeling, you can feel. If you need to walk away, walk away. If you feel like you need to be there, be there. We're going to give you the option to do whatever you think you need to do. And there's no wrong answer because we have no clue what we're doing. I mean, we even went to a soccer game one night. Yeah. And there were some kids playing music loud and set him off. And it was the hardest thing to watch.
Well, because he was doing the thing and he started doing that, which I now know.
Like covered up in the blanket.
I did know now this was a tick. And I didn't know about that, but I do now. So we left that night. He had to separate from my parents, my mom, and he's very close with her. And so any separation from her was very hard. It was almost the same as separation from me. So even coming back to me, transitioning to me from them was very, very hard. But it helped us because they kept him so many times when he couldn't go to school because I couldn't get him through the door. And it wasn't worth it to anyone or me or anybody.
No one.
So that night was just a really bad night, and he was screaming at us the entire way home. And Jen was home doing schoolwork, and you kind of came in, and at this point I didn't even judge you a little bit. I understood completely. He said,
I couldn't do it.
I've got to go. I can't do this right now. He is not leaving me for good. I knew he would do that.
But I took Mallory because it was...
And this was the one where we actually I didn't feel like he was with me at all. Owen was there whatsoever. And so he was fighting me tooth and nail, and I got him onto like in a bedroom.
She could be an MMA fighter because she got him in some kind of hold.
I just put him like in a hold and just held on to him just so that he wouldn't move too much and hurt me. Jen stayed with me, and finally he came out of it. And when I tell you we negotiated everything for him, she ended up putting like a sheet on the wall and a projector movie that he chose. And I finally called Drew because I think y'all decided to go eat, and that was good. And they were gonna bring me some food back, because I was hungry. And I called Drew and I was like, he's back. And once he would come out of it after saying the terrible, horrible things to us about how much he hated us and we hate him and he don't want to see us anymore and he would just like to be a different family. He's going to run away when we go to sleep.
Or he doesn't want to live.
He doesn't want to live anymore, all these things. And, but when he would come out of it, he was like, oh my gosh, I love you so much. And I rubbing on your face and kissing on you. And I'm like,
where's Mal and Dad?
And yeah, where are they at? Why are we here? And I said, you don't remember anything? And he's like, no. And he would talk about this black fog. He's like, it's just like a black fog. I don't remember anything. So that made me feel a little bit better that he didn't remember it. But then I called you and I'm like, he's back and all the things. Well, long story short, we dealt with many, many nights like that. I would say
hard
nights.
Hard, and
to where we at this point we know we're dealing. I think we all are like. Jen had done even more research and found out that you could take ibuprofen.
Hey Michelle, it's Dr. Van Norman.
Yeah, that's our pediatrician.
And then we'll get to where we went and how we ended up there. But Dr. Van Norman, and she's been wonderful through this.
We found another page. Jen had found another page that talked about ibuprofen and the inflammation that was in the brain that was causing all of these things with PANDAS. And we're like, well, I'll try it. We would notice that his raging fits weren't quite as long or as intense when he would be on the ibuprofen. And when it would wear off, it would be right back again. So we're kind of like, all right, well, that's something. And I think at that point, that's when I got on these web pages. I'm on all these PANDAS parents web pages that
I'm not.
No, I am, and I read all of it. I only read it when it's like when it seems to be similar to what we're doing, because I mean, it's a lot of stuff out there.
Now, to interject real quick, there was a weekend that everything was just completely upside down, and Sarah was home. I had to work, thank God. Every now and again, you need to feel like you have something normal. And she watched a couple of YouTube documentaries. One of them was My Child's Not Crazy. The other one was Stolen Childhood. So she
and that's
watched
when I'm
those.
like, that's what we're living.
Yeah.
This is like these people. Oh my gosh! Like we even said, like, how did they get in here and like film our life? Like they're living what we're living. And
it's like you took kids from all over the world. You sent them to a conference and you said,
do
all this really crazy crap at the same time, and they all got the memo and they nailed it.
So I'm like, there's no way that these kids would know to act like this and do these things, and there's just something wrong in their brain. It's inflammation in the brain from onset of strep throat, or there's PANS, which is also just any type of anything in your body.
Now, PANDAS is slightly controversial, just so you know.
Mm-hmm. But it's real. But even our pediatrician, she said, now, I mean, she was honest and was kind of like, I don't know a lot about it, but it's real. I mean, she would still like love the woman because she has like she was a cheerleader for us and like helped us with the other doctor that we've been with and everything. So, but on one of these pages I get on because like we start looking for doctors that in the area or near, or Canada.
Well, she called and she was like, "Hey, look, you need to watch these," and I said, "I can't.
Yeah,
I'm sorry.
Watch them." But at this point, I'm trying to dig and find anything I can find out.
Yeah, and she's like, "Look, there's all these people in Canada," and I said,
"Well, let's go.
Book the thing. Let's go."
But then I started thinking, there's got to be somebody near, and I get on.
She brings the logic back.
I get back on Facebook on these PANDAS pages, and I see that. I'm like, there might be somebody in Memphis, and I'm like, well, I don't know. That looked like a psychiatrist, which is fine, but I wanted to, I was wanting like a doctor. Like, I guess, I don't know, my mind was just, so I find, one of the parents had mentioned like a doctor in Dothan, Alabama. And then I'm like, I see a thing like, oh, he was on a documentary called My Kid's Not Crazy, or My Child's Not Crazy. And I'm like, oh, I watched that. Okay. So, that next morning, I'm like, actually on the way to the pediatrician's
Yes.
office, because I'm like, he's saying his throat's hurting again. So we're back going to find out what's wrong.
We weren't chancing that
No.
crap. I mean,
So,
life was bad enough.
We are on the way to the pediatrician's office. Drew's gonna meet me there. I have this phone number to this doctor, and I think you were bringing Owen. I didn't have Owen,
Yes.
so he brought it. And I'm on the way there, and I'm like, I'm calling this doctor in Dothan, Alabama, and I'm fixing to sound crazy. So I called the lady, and she answered the phone, and I said, "Ma'am," I said, "I need you to just listen to me. I'm gonna sound crazy." She goes, "If that's what you're saying, you've called the right place." And I immediately felt like peace. She said, "In fact, go ahead and tell me a little bit about your baby." So I did, and she said, "I'm fixing to send you to, I'm going to go ahead and let you talk to Dr. Ashley's wife, who is a nurse practitioner." So I get her on the phone. I'm telling her, I said, I feel like I'm going to sound crazy. She goes, "Nope, you're not." She said, "Just tell me everything." Soon as I get all the things out, she said, "We've got to get him into remission right now." She said, "It sounds just like PANDAS." She said, "My child had it." So they have 2 children. They actually have an autistic child, and they have a neurotypical child.
Which means normal.
Yeah.
For those of us that don't know
Yes,
these
I know.
things.
So a child that does not have autism, and the child that did not have autism was actually the child that had PANDAS. I call them, and she's like, "We need to get him into remission right now. This sounds very early on. So can y'all be here?" This is like a Tuesday or Monday. She's like, "Can you be here by
Wednesday. It was
Wednesday?"
Wednesday.
And I said, yes. I didn't even hesitate. I didn't know his schedule. I knew he was busy. I didn't care. I was going to go by myself if I had to, but ended up that we were able to go with my parents. So, because he had a prior appointment, and he's got to make some money, because they don't take insurance.
I think you can file it, but
yeah, but
again,
I didn't care.
I would have flown to Canada. I would have crawled on broken glass to China if that's what it took to get my son back.
Yeah.
I don't care.
So this is sometime in early February, I think, that we're going to see Dr. Ashley, Dr. Claude Ashley at Innovative Healthcare in Dothan, Alabama.
They're fantastic.
They are. So Owen and I and my parents go, and Owen's nervous and all the things, but we finally get in there and we talk to them, and you sit and talk with him, and they have somebody it's the court, looks like a court reporter, and she is typing my entire story. I mean, he's going back, he's not, he's looking at me, and I don't think he's thinking I'm crazy. Like, I really don't. Like, he's listening, he's writing everything I'm saying. He's very slow to speak, very well spoken, like very nice. The clinic is beautiful, and like all the people are just wonderful. And and Owen's left the room. It's just he and I talking, so that we're not making Owen uncomfortable or anything. And at one point he goes, "I don't think it's very hard to get this diagnosis." He's like, "I think that I'm going to give you a diagnosis of PANDAS today." He said, "Because my son had the exact same thing." And he was like, "We're going to take a break here for a minute." Right before he got up, he said, "You're crazy, right?" And he laughed, and he said, "That's what we were told by doctors." He said, "And I'm a medical physician." He said, "And my wife and I have 40 years between us." He said, "And I had colleagues and people like that calling us crazy." He said, "Because my child was dealing with this for 2 years, and they didn't know what it was." He actually went to seminars under the lady who actually named PANDAS.
Dr. something Sweeto?
Yeah.
I believe is what it is.
So, he's very smart, and he's like, "I'm going to be honest with you, though. It's a process, and you're just going to have to. It's a journey." So I'm listening to all these things, and I'm hearing it, and he's telling me we're going to just try the antibiotics. We're going to try some things. Owen was on a mood. We were trying something for his mood at that point, like
for
a
like
mood
3 days.
stabilizer. Yeah, it wasn't working. Obviously, because he hadn't been on it long enough. But even then, Dr. Ashley said, "Let's just go ahead and take him off of that right now." He said, "Because that's just a Band-Aid." He said, we did not fault our pediatrician for doing it, because I begged for it.
Yeah,
so
correct.
It's not her fault. I begged her to write
us.
anything. So the antibiotics he had tried weren't working. And of course, while we're sitting there with him, I do tell him, Owen had all these things. And then I said, and then at the end of, while we were on our trip at Christmas, he couldn't taste anything. So we're pretty sure he had COVID. And he said, that changes everything. He said, that actually changes everything. He said, I'm going to still say PANDAS. He said, But the COVID being involved, he said, we're going to call it long COVID. He said what happened was, and Owen was having like these spots popping up on him that looked like warts or like sores.
In the
and
beginning,
things like
he
that.
had a spot on his knuckle that
He-
was there
he
for like
scratched it on
a month.
Tree. Yeah, it wouldn't
2
heal.
months?
His body wouldn't heal. And my mom even was like, he's not healing. Like his body's not healing right. And so Dr. Ashley did describe to it and explain to us that the long COVID, actually, Owen might not have had mono and all those things. It could have been years before that he had mono or strep or any of those things. He said, but anything that was dormant in Owen's body, the long COVID brought it all back. So he said, we've got to find the inciting agent that's causing him the most problems. And he said, and that's going to be a process because basically, of course, he brings Owen back in and he's like, Owen, I'm going to tell you a story. And he tells Owen the story of his own son. And it sounds very similar to where he even said, like, and Owen at this time wouldn't eat real a lot, you know, like he was really just getting where he wouldn't eat. But his son, and he was even talking like a baby to the doctor. He's like, and Owen doesn't talk like a baby, like he told the doctor, you're the best doctor in the whole world. And I'm like, and I pointed at him like when he said that, and the doctor said, that's very normal for this. He said, my son, had to do a lot of things that were very babyish and thought that they were, the food was poison. I mean, there's like the things that it's irrational fears that are not real.
Super irrational.
So thankfully during all this time, Owen has learned to swallow pills because he would not take any liquids. So thank God he's very good at medicine taker now. We had times that weren't, and I have bribed my kid, and he's probably a little bit bratty now because of the things I've had to do, but we'll deal with that as we go. But
it's a process.
We tried. So after all of that, we met with Dr. Ashley, and Dr. Ashley's like, we're going to get him back. We're going to do whatever we can. Because there's a lot of things you can do, and then there's IVIG, which is like it's an IV like treatment.
Intravenous immunoglobulin.
Yeah, so he was like, that could be something we might have to do. But we got him on an antibiotic. Well, he said, we'll try this antibiotic, and hopefully, and a steroid.
By the end of the weekend, you can have him back.
You might have him back. We didn't. In fact, we had to get off the steroid because it made him stronger than me. And I was having a very hard time keeping him safe and myself safe and other people safe. He had to stop the steroid, and we had to continue the Motrin 3 times a day to help with inflammation because the steroid was going to help with inflammation. And then we so then he got on antibiotic. We realized, so I called him Dr. Ashley, that one's not working. So he's like, let's try another one. We did start to see a little bit of a positive change, just a little bit to where I could get him in the school, but not all day. I could, and it wasn't pretty. It was very ugly.
It's awful.
Yeah, and like I said, we will just say we're very thankful for our school system and our people.
Man,
so,
unlike ever before, I don't work for the school.
and coworkers that will pray for me, and I'm very, very thankful, and pray for our family and love us through all of this, and still be our friend afterward.
And what's hard for me is, when I tell you, I have always loved our schools anyways. It is the reason that we live where we live. We very much love the school. Now, bye, Michelle. Sorry this is so long.
I was going to say, it is long. Y'all don't all have to stay. You can come back and watch it. Or if you know somebody, share it to them.
But why I'm so thankful for the school, I would never, we sat down with the administration. I said, I am beyond thankful for everything you've done. I would have never done this.
No.
So thank you. But seriously, me personally, I'm not doing it. They have been unbelievable. What we didn't know is, I guess every day, there came a point where I had to rearrange my life. Again, I like to go to the gym in the morning. It's just kind of my thing. Am I real strong and in shape? No, but I go. I want to tie my shoes when I'm 80. I rearranged my life because kids are brutal. And the last thing that I want to do is for the kids to see Owen and say, there's Owen. He's crazy. Unwilling to do that. And so I would take him later and he'd be fine. And I would always try to tell him stories. And I told him about just stuff from childhood. And then we would get to the parking lot and it was like the brakes immediately went on. And so I tried to get him out, like,
Because we have found out with pandas, school avoidance is the worst thing. It's the worst part of it. I mean, like, it's one of the worst parts of it because they
Fight
can't
or flight.
Fight or flight. They feel like they're going to die at school.
Now, fight or flight really helped getting that information. Basically, Owen was in a constant state of fight or flight. Now, have we used that? We have.
Is it right? We don't know, but
Are we
had
good
to
parents
live a
for
life.
it? I don't know.
We got to where
I don't
we
know.
had to trump the anger that he had with fear. And my kid is not afraid of the police, but in the rages he was, because I think he knew enough to know that some of the things he was saying and doing could get him in a lot of trouble. So we would have to tell him that, well, if you do those things, the police may have to come to talk to you. I know. And then he also said that, and then he was also, did not want to go to the ER. So there was times we actually drove to the ER.
There was a
parking
day
lot.
she went 3 times, and the third time I met her there, and I said, you understand, if we walk through that door in this state, they're taking him from us. And when they take him from us, I don't know how we get him back. I don't know how long it takes to get him back, and I can't deal with that. I cannot deal with them taking my child from me.
Well, we didn't even have to go in. Once we got into the parking lot,
Fight or flight.
yeah, and like I said, and there's a picture, and I was telling them last night that it was actually the worst day of my life. It was it was actually the girls soccer state championship. They won, which was amazing. But it was the worst day of all of our lives as well. So we were excited for Mallory, and we're trying to be there for her. But there's a picture, and you can go back and look at it if you want to, and you can tell that he is not himself, and he's very angry. And we're all smiling as a family,
You can see it in
and
his
he's
eyes.
like about to
gone.
bolt. That's what he looks like. And so Jen and I left with him that day because Drew stayed with Mallory to watch the boys play because they wanted to be there, support the team.
And they also won.
Yes, they did too. And so then Jen and I are trying to put him into the car, and he starts screaming, help, help, they're trying to kidnap me. And I'm like, I don't know what to do. And now I'm also afraid that my phone is going to hear. And so then at that point, he starts telling our phones to call 911. So we had to turn our phones off because he's not in any danger. And like I said, this is the day we end up going to the ER. He comes out of it, and
Finally.
yeah, finally.
And there were days
yeah.
where, and it's sad because, again, we love our kids. We love to spend time with them. But it's like, please, God, just go to sleep so the madness will end.
Yeah.
And you hate to feel that way.
Yeah. And, and so he also was sleeping in our room he had slept in our room since December. He was in our bed because we were afraid to even let our eyes off of him because he's told us that he's going to run away at nighttime.
The knives are still...
We put the knives way up high. I mean, there's things he has said to me.
It's just real.
I will never forget.
It's just real.
He's wanted to hurt us in certain ways, and we'll say, just do it. And he can't, which thank God he didn't do any of them. Because he's still himself enough to know that's wrong and I shouldn't do it. We kept on the medications. We would see slight, improvements, and then we would see not. Of course, now I understand that there's something called herxing, and it actually makes it worse before it gets better, And so I just have to keep trusting that Dr. Ashley did know what he was doing. And he would even say, we're at a crossroads pretty soon. If this doesn't work, we may have to decide something. And then he would try something new, and the new thing we'd see a little bit more improvement. And then a nosedive at spring break. We were on a trip. I'm thinking he's acting out because we're not on a routine. He's starting to do all these things again. He's just being very hard to be around. And we love him dearly, but just being just a little punk, He really was. Everything was made him mad, and we're trying to do fun things. Shortly.
Everybody did everything for him.
Everything.
But part of the fight or flight, now I will tell you, even though I did not go to Alabama, there's a lot of information that Sarah got that was wildly important. And the fight or flight was extremely important. But there's also the part of when you're in fight or flight, you can't experience joy. And if you can't experience joy, he was just living. And so that's like when he would say, going to school, they all hate me. They're going to kill me there. And I mean, this was a everyday thing. They're going to kill me.
He felt that was real.
He really
that
did
was
believe that.
He perceived everything wrong. Or you could just tell him something and he took it wrong. And you didn't even say that. He'd said, the people said this to me. I'm like, they didn't say that to you. Yes, they did. And then Dr. Ashley had explained that they perceive everything wrong, because he explained it to Owen that in his body, you have all these good guys that are supposed to fight all the germs, that the bad guys had disguised themselves as good guys. And so all the bad guys were able to take over all the good guys. And that was how I explained it to Owen. So basically his body is attacking itself, which causes neurological problems and makes you look schizophrenic, makes you look bipolar, makes you look mental, like you have mental problems. And makes you very angry, and makes you rage, and makes you do things that you wouldn't normally do. Makes you very OCD, that you're just constantly thinking about something. Owen stopped having any type of tics because he would make a sound, and he would do a sound all the time, which I thought was because he was in pain. Yeah, and it's hard. I mean, I know some of y'all are out there living it, and it's hard.
Annoying.
It's hard, and
because you want to have compassion, but it just starts running out.
It's really hard, but so I talked to Dr. Ashley again, because at this point we're gonna have some more blood work done, which was a nightmare in itself, because the poor little girl that took his blood. I hope she has thick skin, because he said some things to her. And I called the nurse in. I'm like, you're going to have to hold him down, get the blood from him, because I can't do it. He had already run down the street that day from us. So, and then kicked us, and because he really felt like he was afraid. So he's trying to get away from us because he didn't want blood taken. They end up taking 7 tubes of blood. They send it off. They call me. They need 3 more. I'm like, y'all, this is awful. Which the clinic, our pediatrician, that's why, she's like, bring him here, we'll do it, we can get it done. So we did all of that, did some more blood work. They call me, Dr. Ashley, they send it to Dr. Ashley for me. Dr. Ashley calls me, he's like, his levels are still high. He's like, look, his mycoplasma pneumonia is still really high. He said, I think the medicine that he's on isn't working. I called Drew and I'm like, my gosh, he's unmedicated. Basically, he's not medicated right now because nothing he's on is working for what he has. So
a little banshee.
He's unmedicated. At this point, he was on a mood stabilizer that might have helped him a touch. At this point, just a touch, to take the edge off, maybe.
I'm not convinced.
I still think, but he's still on it, so we ain't gonna stop it right now. But so at that point, he's like, we're gonna try another one. And of course, I called Dr. Ashley. And we're on the phone, and he's like, we're going to be at a crossroads again, because there's some other things we have to look at that are kind of a little bit more in depth. And I'm like, okay. He's like, but let's first try minocycline for mycoplasma pneumonia. He's like, let's just try that. And I'm like, okay, I'm writing notes. I'm trying to write notes that he's saying, because I'm like, it's above my head. I don't really quite understand. I would ask questions to make sure I understood. And he's like, because he's already on, he looks like a little old fella in the morning taking handfuls of pills. That
little dude is taking more pills in the last 5 months than I've taken in a lifetime.
And he added, at that point, so he added the minocycline, and he also added another beta blocker to try to help us at that point, because we've told him he is saying he's going to run away, and he has walked down the street or run down the street. And Dr. Ashley's like, okay, maybe we can take some of the adrenaline down a notch with this. He said this would be more for y'all's sanity, and I think it could help him a little bit. So he's like, but we're going to put him on the minocycline because we got to fix what's going on in his body. We still got to fix that. Within 3 days, we saw a huge improvement. Like big improvement. He walked into the school. He let me walk him to class.
The best thing he said, the first time it really clicked, Sarah calls me and she's like, hey.
Because he would tell you, nothing's working, none of this will ever work. I
hate pandas, and it's like, hey pal, we all hate pandas.
Yeah.
We loathe pandas. But he got to Sarah's classroom at the end of the day and he said, I felt happy today.
Yeah. And that's when we're like,
incredible.
Yeah. I'm like, he said, I felt more myself. Now, of course, at school he does amazing. We get home and we are dealing with a little bit more at home, because what we also understand is that they have had so much suppression all day, and he suppressed all the things all day long. And when you're home, that's your comfortable place. It's going to come out on those you love the most, which is hard on
And it came.
It's hard on those you love the most.
And it came.
Yeah, it came many times, and we dealt with it when it would come. But we kept on all this medicine, and we've not changed anything since. He has been on this medicine since then. We're still on it now.
So that's the really crazy, sucky part of this. Now, there's some interesting things that have happened along the way. If I told you I was as fired up about the medical community as I've ever been, I would be lying to you. My precious mom, who was about to have back surgery, went and talked to somebody in the office who, were trying to find a pediatric neurologist. And so, by craziest of circumstances, there's somebody that she knows somebody that knows somebody. And so I typed notes for an hour or more. Type all these notes of everything in great detail. And I put PANDAS in there. And the response that we got back was basically...
Go to the K clinic.
Yeah, we're so sorry to hear that Owen's going through this, but it sounds like he needs to see a psychiatrist.
Or behavior therapist.
Now, one of the things that came up in the beginning was a behavior therapist. And
they're great.
Not opposed to anything on the planet. Again, help us help our son. But one of the things that the Dr. Ashley told Sarah was...
He said, cancel that appointment. Because I had an appointment with the K clinic, which they're wonderful. Once again, I'm saying they're wonderful. He said, go ahead and cancel that. It's not going to do you any good right now. He said, because when Owen, the state that he is in, anything they tell him to do, Owen's not going to be able to do it because his brain won't let him. He said, and then you're going to have a raging fit because he can't do those things. So it's going to make him feel like he's bad because these kids feel like they're bad. He said, and Owen would use the terms sometimes, I'm going to let the bad guy out of me. And he knew that there was a good and a bad. And also, like when he would say bad things would happen when I go to school, it might not actually be that something would happen to him. He might actually felt that he was the bad that was happening. Like that he would say things and he would do things because he doesn't want to do the things that he was saying or being mean to people or to the teachers. He was never mean to kids, thank God.
A question that was posed, though, was what mental problem can you alter with Motrin? The answer is none. So if there's a change because of the Motrin, he said you don't have a mental problem, you have a medical problem.
Yeah.
And until you solve the medical problem, you can't touch the mental problem. They are unfortunately hand in hand. And so there were some things that gave us great perspective. Now, much like everybody we talked to, is it possible that Owen could have become extremely OCD, extremely anxious, talk like a baby, heard voices, everything you can imagine, wants to dig us all a grave and throw us in? Is it possible that all these things could happen at the same time? Sure, it's possible.
But probably not.
But is it likely? The answer is no. And so that becomes the question of, you've had a normal kid for 8 years. I know plenty of people that have extreme challenges they deal with mental health and other issues with children and family members. They didn't catch it when they were 8. It just didn't happen like that.
And that was a lot of things is that you just don't catch OCD at 8 years old usually, unless there's been some sort of traumatic experience that happened, and there wasn't. He didn't have anything. There was no brain trauma. There's nothing. So, we're on the medicines. And when I say medicines, he's on 2 that would stabilize his mood. They're very low doses. He's not doped up by any means. He's on antibiotics and an antiviral and ibuprofen. And within the last, he went to a wedding this weekend, which if you would have told me he was going to be in a wedding, which we knew he was,
we almost called and said, hey, maybe this isn't a good idea.
That you were going to have to find somebody else. I don't think he can do it because this, months ago, the child wouldn't have walked into the building. So you had a kid walk down the aisle. Of course, I'm crying when he walks down the aisle because I'm like, he did it. Like, oh my gosh. Danced out the aisle like they were gonna do because all the big kids are doing it, and he even did a turn and a point, and then that night danced in the middle of everybody like it was. And that is who Owen was and is, and we're seeing more and more and more. We do deal with some OCD stuff still, that his brain is always going, like his brain is constantly going, and sometimes
but you can talk to him through what's going on,
and he's learning that when he gets mad now, He's not like flying off the handle. He's not saying the horrible things. Every now and then he'll say he doesn't like us or he hates us, but it just pops out. But now, even on the way home tonight, he said something. He kind of got frustrated at all of us about a game this evening, and he said, "I don't like my family." And on the way home, he said, "I'm sorry about what I said earlier." And before, Owen would have never. He didn't apologize because I'm going to be honest with you. There are some things I do think that he knows he said and did. He won't acknowledge it. And we're fine with it. We're fine with it. We want him to not know
that he doesn't
it.
remember. Now, we'll all be scarred forever.
I know that there are things now. I know he does because I understand a lot more about it now. But I know that I'm okay with him not apologizing back then. But now the fact that, and sometimes I'll even say, "Hey, you do need to apologize for that," and he will. But the fact that you can talk to him, you can reason with him, he's having fun again, he is laughing, he feels joy, and
it was more like his OCD stuff.
It was more about talking about stuff. Like he gets hung up on the
Well, he made some noises.
Like
there was a moment.
Those are ticks.
And I swear I wanted to put my head through the wall. He'd go or something. I don't know what it was, but it was wildly frustrating.
But it was when his stomach was hurting, so once again we were associated with pain, but it wasn't. It was the OCD stuff. He doesn't have to like do rituals. There was one day he was going back and forth between the doorbells. But it stopped. I don't know if it was just his brain told him to do it. And then one day he kind of did the light switch a couple of times, and I thought, oh gosh, but he didn't keep on. His OCD stuff is like more irrational fears. If I can't flush the toilet, he won't. He still doesn't like to. He'll ask me to do it when he leaves, and he obsesses over things. His is more like fish,
squirrel traps.
Squirrel traps. He doesn't want to hurt the squirrel; just wants to catch it, and he would obsess over moving it constantly and putting stuff in it, putting food in it.
Which again, we bought squirrel traps because it's anything that you can do.
Anything. I'm telling you, I made the kid a brat. I'm just gonna be real. Like I've made him bratty.
Kelly, Crystal, whichever one you are, that is part of this. And when we've watched, so I finally did watch the documentaries about, My Child's Not Crazy and Stolen Childhood or whatever. Mm-hmm. Is that what it is?
Yeah.
One of the hardest stories for me to watch, and I cried. When I tell you I have cried, I feel like I'm out of tears. There's a mom and a daughter in this scene, and the daughter is healthy, and everybody looks
She's
great.
A teenager
She's a teenager, and they're talking, and they begin to share their story. And basically, what happened was the medical community had convinced themselves and everybody else that mom and dad were feeding the kid rat poison. They took the child from the parents.
And both girls. They had 2 kids too. They took them both from the parents.
And the dad committed suicide. That's heartbreaking to me. Dr.
Ashley, when I sat in front of him, he also said he's very, he's really passionate about it because he said there's so many children that are misdiagnosed. Some of them even can even be diagnosed as autistic, and they're not. Or there could be on the spectrum, but there's other stuff going on. And he said there's kids in facilities right now that are sick. They're just sick, and they need to be treated medically, not just Band-Aids of psychiatric meds, which are fine, and I'm all for them when you need them. I am.
Sure.
But and Owen is, like I said, I'm not going to deny it. Owen is on a couple of mood stabilizers for OCD. I mean, it's for bipolar and things like that. But when I say low dose, it's a very low dose, and it'll be something he'll be able to come off of, I do believe.
There's a family that I watched that their kid, who was a probably late teenager, said, I've been on 30 psych meds before they figured it out. 30 psych meds had been sent away to all these facilities time after time after time.
And some of them get sent to OCD facilities, which actually
for years people fight this.
To do the things which I mean, that's how you treat OCD. I understand it. But these kids are actually forced to watch the thing that they're afraid of, which Owen is also afraid of throwing up. That's another fear that he has, and it's like the worst thing in the world. Or if you're going to throw up, and he's going to have to leave the room because he can't handle it. So like even like smells are another thing. So school, it was hard because of like the foods and stuff like that. There's been times he has had to leave the classroom feeling nauseous because somebody was smushing food or something like that and he couldn't handle it. So there are some things that he's got to do now that is fine.
London, no, he should not have to always be on those, but there will be a time now.
So basically the inflammation that he has, the doctor was showing me, he's like, we want him at baseline. He's like, Owen is like here, like his inflammation is really, really high. He's like, we need to get him, we want him here. He's like, with the baseline of like where your levels should be, he said, but we really want him here. So that way when he gets sick or somebody around him gets sick or he's got a tooth comes in or anything, it just bumps him up a little bit, but it doesn't push him all the way back here.
Now, here's my theory, and I'm fine. There's a point I don't want him to take all this crap. However, I don't ever, not ever, never, never want to live through this again. And so my theory is, now I may as well be a medical doctor. I'm real close. I almost have my PhD, I'm sure. But my theory is this: as we go through, when we say, hey, it's time to start looking at dropping some of these medicines, I want the best blood test that you could ever imagine. Because
pretty soon, I think that's going to be the next thing is he'll have his levels drawn again.
Now,
and we'll see where he's at. And I do miss my little Grayson, London. Give him a hug.
So there's a side of this too that is really important, I think, to me. Now, if you don't know us all that well, we lead worship at church. I have broken down, Dr. Drew is in the house. I have broken down, standing on a stage, cried my little eyes out. There was a time going through this, I know who Jesus is, and I know that he has a plan and a purpose, and I know all of these things. I know this. I know this way down in here, every bit of that. But if you have never felt so helpless in your life, that's a terrible place to be.
And I'm going to be honest that, and I'm coming back from it now, but numb was the word too, that I would have to say that I became, that at one point I was thinking I needed to go get on something, but I said, hey, my body has decided to just help me feel numb, which is not a good place to be. But like I said, I'm coming back from all that, and I do feel like there's hope, and like we know that we know that God is in control and that we trust God. But it was hard to talk about. There were people that reached out to me. The one person knows who they are, and I won't mention any names, and I told her, I couldn't ever actually talk to her on the phone because I couldn't handle it. Drew was able to, but I was afraid I would just I won't
mention her name, but I will mention another one. Lisa, so that's the crazy thing. I have read all kinds of differing opinions on this. Now, the realtor friend that I know, and you know her, and I won't call her name because I don't know if she'd be mad at me or not. The first thing that she told me when I talked to her on the phone, and we finally had a chance for her to tell me her story, she said, I want you to know two things. Number one, my son is fine. He's about to get married, and, after he hit about 13, it was done.
Yeah.
She had at-home strep test. She had everything you could imagine, and she knew, like, now we have a pretty good idea of what, I say magic, it's not magic. We know what can get him back to normal.
Yeah.
So she knew what those things were, and she was very, very adamant. I mean, in the world we live in, I feel like it's very much, again, I'm not discrediting doctors. I'm very thankful for a lot of them and a lot of what they do. Do I think that most of them have the ability to think outside of the box and look at something that's maybe a little weirder? There are some. I don't know that that's the norm. Here nor there. If nobody else is going to fight for your kids, you've got to be the one.
No matter how crazy it sounds.
No matter how crazy it sounds. Now we started trying to mark stuff off the list. And one of those things was, okay, we've had a CT scan, we've had a stomach scope, we've had an EEG, we've had an EKG.
Even Dr. Ashley said
yeah.
the MRI.
So we started talking about an MRI. Now, we were on our way to pick him up, and Sarah gets a text message. There is a precious human being that lives up the street from us, and her name is Jennifer Davis. And I will call her name, and I will tag her in this when I'm done. Jennifer Davis shared our story with somebody else. And that somebody else reached out to Sarah the very day we were, and I was kind of really on the fence. Do we have an MRI or do we not have an MRI? And what do we do? And this person, when I'll go through all the things that God has done through this that we may have missed in the moment, but it's unbelievable. At the very moment that we needed something to happen, Sarah gets a text message from somebody. We had no idea what they had been through. And so Sarah, I said, you just want to call her? And she was like, I can't.
I couldn't. I just couldn't. And I mean, like
I couldn't watch the videos.
I could talk to her now. Like,
she could.
So, I mean, I probably should tell her. I really could talk to her now about it.
But I did call her.
But we texted. I just had a very hard time talking about it without just losing it. So it was hard for me at the time to talk about it.
So I talked to her for probably an hour and 20 minutes. And I said, I want all the gory details. I want to know everything that happened. And it's very similar. When you meet people that have lived through this, that are going through this, it looks very similar. It's really bizarre kind of how everything lays out.
They were the one who told us to watch the movie.
Yes.
Brain on Fire.
Brain on Fire.
Netflix.
It's hard to watch.
It's hard to watch, but it was
our freaking life lived out through a 21-year-old. Yeah. So if you have, I mean, again, if you're kind of interested in what in the world this is, and you're slightly curious, Brain on Fire, My Kid's Not Crazy.
There is some language in My
Stolen
Kid's Not
Childhood.
Crazy, I will say that. But
there's some language probably in all of them.
Because it's desperate people, and it's not okay, but I mean, at the same time, it is okay, I understand. I know this is getting very long, but I want to just say some things, like some things to watch for are all of a sudden wetting the bed, and which we have lived as well, and then sudden behavior change that is bizarre behavior, or just looking like your kid is acting out and not being themselves, not eating very well, raging fits, trying to think of some other things.
Raging fits
that don't seem normal. And I'm trying to think of all the things that they said.
Once we figured out what it was, again, me unwilling to read, if I had been probably a little more receptive, because you almost feel like the tinfoil hat guy. Like, I'm the conspiracy theory, and it's not that, but
it's for the reason why they don't label it PANDAS is insurance.
You can't take a test. You can't cram it down somebody's throat and say, "Oh, it's PANDAS."
So now they've been able to still, like, all of our medications are still covered and all that, but like when we went and had the MRI, I said I wanted to have the MRI for encephalitis, which is inflammation of the brain. I didn't use the word PANDAS. Now the nurse kept looking at me, and she finally said, encephalitis, and I said, well, PANDAS. She goes, I've heard of PANDAS. She said, but I didn't know what you were talking about the other. And she goes, and I was wondering if you were trying to just not say it. I said, we don't know.
Because you don't know who. It's like you're in a secret society.
Yeah.
Who can say it?
Yeah, I mean, it's just, but we can get into that another day. Why it's for insurance purposes, but I don't care. Even Dr. Ashley said you can call it PANDAS, you can call it koalas. I don't care what you call it. It is something. Your body. You were sick.
Samuel, I'm sorry it's so long. I feel like this has been going on forever, and I'm so sorry. There's so much, and I mean, really, when we were in the moments that we've lived through, I would have watched a 5-hour something.
We also wanted to we were kind of waiting to do a video, and at some point we probably should really do a very condensed version. Because this is just us being real and honest and putting it all out there, so that if you see a child I see things way differently now. One, if you're somewhere and you see a child acting out, maybe don't judge, because you don't know what is going on. You don't know if that kid really did change because Owen acted out in public, and like people, our close friends, have seen things that he's done, and they've heard things that he said. Get you a village of people that won't run from you because
it looks wild.
Yeah,
it looks wild.
and thankfully, and then friends that were been close to Owen that have dealt with a lot, because he's not the best of friend. I'm just going to be honest. He's really not a very good friend sometimes, and he's learning still at this point. Sometimes I feel like we've talked a lot about how he's had to learn how to be able to engage with others in the appropriate way and not get so mad or angry, and he's still working on that. So it's basically you have to relearn a lot of things that you should have already known and that you should do. And but he finished the 2nd grade. He's going to go to 3rd grade, which we didn't think he would.
And we hope it goes well.
He missed a lot of school, and we're going to have to reach out to administrators and things like that and talk with them, because there's a possibility of it's called waxing and waning and things that can come back. And we're believing that it doesn't, and we're believing that we are on the path to baseline for Owen, that beyond baseline, lower than that he will be able to nothing's going to affect him like it did this time. So
yeah. Now again, I know this has been really long, and I'm not quite done. You don't have to watch it all. But the reason this was really important for me today is because of the message I got. A family that dealt with this for 7 years. For 7 years. It's at the golf course, and my little eyes are tearing up reading these messages. A family for 7 years has dealt with this, and a load of psychotic medications, in and out of facilities. They read something that I wrote. They asked a couple of questions. Lo and behold, it is the same freaking thing. Why did nobody ever question what was going on? So let me tell you real quick. There was a night, probably the night where everything felt like life had crashed and burned. I'm in the middle of building a guitar. It's just kind of been at the right time for me to build this guitar. There were nights that I just wanted to go and stand there and whittle some wood and not think. But one night I needed some screws, and it's late. And I went in and I told Sarah, I said, hey, I'm going to go to Lowe's and just get a bag of screws. And she said, I'm going to come with you. We make it down the driveway. Wow. We get to the red light that's probably a half mile from our house, and she loses it. She just loses it. And I get it, because this really, I felt like all I wanted to do for months was just have a pity party and cry and try to figure out how to fix our kid. Like, how do we get our life back? And so we drove down the road a little bit, and she's a mess. And we pull up behind this car, and it says WAYMKR. And it took me a second. And then it was like, Waymaker. That's cool. And for the first time in the middle of this whole storm, we began to talk, and I said, have we stopped to talk about all that God has done in this? And we started going through things I didn't even think that we had really stopped to think about. And the people in our life, and the ones that, we have a tribe of people that love us. I don't know why you do, but we're thankful. And we talked about the fact that there were multiple people, and the people that God put in our lives that mentioned PANDAS. Again, let me go back to the people that have lived through this for 7 years. We lived through this for 4 months, and I don't ever want to do it again. I feel extremely blessed. But we looked at the fact that Jen would take the time to read and Google every symptom that child had.
And even when we wouldn't listen and she didn't stop.
No, because I wouldn't listen. It's just, it is what it is. I can't undo it. But the fact that we really were only 4.5, 5 months, do I think we're out of the woods? I don't.
But we were seeing that if he wouldn't have had the help that he got, he would have ended up somewhere. Oh, yeah. He wasn't eating. He wasn't himself. He was miserable. He was losing his mind.
And you begin to question,
how far would that have gone?
Does this create long-term damage? And then did he just go crazy? That's a hard thing to deal with as a parent is, am I being naive and am I just missing the fact that maybe he's gone crazy? That's a really crappy place to be as a parent, to question your sanity and the sanity of your child. I don't wish that on anybody. I don't wish this on the worst person in the world, because it is that miserable. And so now, like, fast forward through this, there have been a list of people. There was even somebody who I do a Zoom call once a month, and on this Zoom call, I couldn't make one. And so I just sent a message and I said, hey, I'm so sorry. I can't do it. Our life is a wreck. Thanks. And so the next week she called and she knows my whole family by name. And she's like, how are things? She had no clue what was going on. And so I told her the story. And as I get through the story, she's asking very, very pointed questions. And we get to the end and she's kind of sniffling and she said, hey, Drew, for the last few months, our life is upside down. Our son is having these fits of rage. We don't know how to make it stop. We don't know what we're doing. And we're lost. I've never heard the term PANDAS in my life. But when we get off the phone, I'm about to make a lot of phone calls and do a lot of research. And so to be able to give, because I'm in the very same boat, if we hadn't lived through this, you could have said, I just don't know. I don't know what PANDAS is. And now I have a lot of questions of how widespread is this really? Is this
they used
more
to
of a
say
thing?
it was like 1 in like 200 or something. It's not. It is. There's a lot of kids dealing with this, and they do. You know, it's associated. Like some of it's associated with strep, some of it's COVID and things like that. So there's a lot of things that play into it, and there's other stuff too that's called like co-infections. But you know, that's for another day because I don't even understand that very well. But
so the hope is there has to be a reason. Anything you ever go through, and this is, I have always said this, like when we worked with youth, if your life sucks, if it was terrible when you were a kid, I hate that and I'm really sorry. Share your story, because you never know who's going through the very same thing that you're going through. And so I feel like now, again, did I struggle with, hey God, you really could fix this? And I know you can, and I know that with everything inside of me, I know that you could, and it all be gone. Absolutely. I believe every word of that. But it was a struggle to know that I do serve a God that can do any of that at any time. And I'm watching my baby struggle. And I'm looking at my family who I feel like we're all crumbling. You know, you've got the little tiny one who's struggling, and we all can't get it together, and while he's going through that. And so it's really hard. And so I had a lot of moments where it's like, hey God, you could fix it. But again, back to the tribe of people, there's a very close human to me who went through some health struggles as a little boy. And there was one morning that he came to me and he said, hey, look, I want you to know. He said, I want you to know that the reason that I serve Jesus today is because how my parents handled what I went through as a kid. And for me to hear that was huge. And then his mom came to me and she said, listen to me. Whatever you do, do not get out of the Word. Do not stop reading the Bible. Do not stop praying. Do not give up any of that. Y'all, there are people after people after people that have encouraged us through this, that has been a godsend. And if you've been one of those people, thank you.
Thank you. Yes. Thank you for sharing even your story when it was hard to share with us, you know, the people that reached out to tell us. And it was the moments that I needed to hear it, and I needed that. And they'll never know that, you know, at the moment when I was spiraling, it brought me back to reality. and help me to be grounded again and know that, okay, we're on the right track. We got to do these things we're still doing, and we're not doing wrong. I think anything you do for your child, I think my mom told me that long time ago I had to make some decisions for Owen when he's little. And I was like, I don't know if I'm doing the right thing or not. And she was like, you'll never regret helping your child ever. You won't ever. So even if it wasn't something he needed, you won't regret doing it and spending money that maybe even if it wasn't something that would work or whatever, she's like, you'll never regret that. So I think that's where we're at, is like, I understand, sometimes financially, like, you might not be able to do it. Reach out. I think there is people that would be willing to help. And like I said, we like Dr. Ashley. I pray that if you know somebody dealing with this, just have them make the phone call to them.
Hey, listen.
They'll tell you if you need to see them or not.
And very much like Jen, who was so adamant, if you see something, now I talked to somebody else who, when I tell you they went through the whole thing, and I said, we're living parallel lives. I'm not saying that your child has the same thing, but what I'm saying is it's time to ask questions. Make the phone call. What's the worst that happens by you saying, hey, listen, this is what we're going through. This is everything we're dealing with. Is it possible? Who cares? So what? Somebody may think you're crazy. We sure don't give a crap. We've just been talking for an hour and a half. I mean, we've given you every gory detail there is. I don't care. What I do care about is if I see somebody near me, now I may be like, oh, I bet your kid has PANDAS.
I'm not gonna lie. Now I'll be seeing people out, and I'm like, might need to try an ibuprofen and see. And that's what Dr. Ashley said. He's like, if you come across a parent that their child is doing some things out of the question, what would it hurt to give them a Motrin? They have there is one thing I should tell you. Owen will tell you this in a heartbeat now. He is dye free. He will not eat
red
or yellow dye. Dr. Ashley said that is one of the worst things that a child with PANDAS, really, I'm starting to think that could be bad for all of us, but it causes inflammation. So, and it makes it worse. So in the times that Owen maybe did have it, he was a little bit off the charts those days. So he will tell you in a heartbeat not to have it. So there's dye-free children's Motrin. Make sure you get that one if you want to try it to see if it worked, because there was a point that I was giving him the orange Motrin, and he would kind of like act really wild for a little bit. Then he would settle down, and I read on the PANDAS page, make sure that you're using dye-free. And I'm like, I walked in there. They put
dye in everything, in case you're wondering. I had no idea.
He's eating the yellow 6 one, and I'm like, my gosh. So there's a chewable grape. It's dye-free. You can crush it up, put it in yogurt.
They put dye in pickles.
You can chew it up.
It's in everything.
So if your kid, if you do see somebody like that and they're willing to try the ibuprofen and they see a change in behavior, this is what Dr. Ashley told me. He said if they see the behavior settle down some or things like that, and that maybe has been off the charts, they could possibly be dealing with the same exact thing. And it's just inflammation in the brain. You can call it PANDAS, you can call it PANS, you can call it encephalitis, you can call it whatever you want to, but it could be very, very similar, and it's just all inflammation in the brain. So,
which is just insane.
Yeah.
This really went a lot longer than I had ever planned. I'm
really
so sorry. But if you know anybody that's going through this,
you can always tell them to reach out.
Share the video. I don't care. Share the video. Give them my number. That's totally fine.
They can message us on Facebook.
We are more than happy to talk to anybody, because to feel like you have somebody that's going through or understands what you're going through is invaluable. It is absolutely fantastic. Thank you all for praying for us.
Yes.
Thank you for loving us.
Even when we sound crazy.
Our child is not crazy. We left the MRI.
And we both said we sound crazy.
We looked at each other and it's like, do you know how freaking crazy we sound?
And also, just so you know, inflammation will not show up on an MRI.
Yes. As a matter of fact, it shows up on absolutely nothing. There is not one thing. And if you...
There are some tests you can have done, like panels and things like that done, that you'd send off and come back for a long time. But pretty much like, like Dr. Ashley was saying, if this, he's doing this, it's he's like, I feel very confident in my diagnosis with PANDAS.
To reference brain on fire, and this is what gave me a little bit of validity, is because we had just had the MRI, and when I tell you everything was clean, and that's frustrating. Because again, it's, okay, so we have a made up thing. Like, I understand why there's a little bit of controversy, because there's nothing. The MRI's fine, the CT's fine, everything's fine. Why is it fine? Except for you do the blood work and then everything's different. But when you're looking at like the brain on fire, and this girl goes through everything. All the things that we saw with Owen are very similar to kind of what she went through. And then they put her in the hospital and they're doing all these tests and they're like, we've checked for everything under the sun, everything that you could imagine. We've looked for it. She doesn't have it. She's crazy. That was truly the way that everybody else thought, except for one person said, this doesn't make sense. I think we need more this doesn't make sense people in the world. It's okay to be wrong. It's okay to take a guess sometimes and say, we're just not sure. That's okay. But because there was the one person that said this doesn't make sense, she went to somebody that figured out what in the world was going on, even though every test they had done showed that everything was fine. There was inflammation. And so that starts a whole nother question for me of imaging and things that we're doing in the medical world. Why can't we see it? Is there a way that we could see it? I could go for forever. But anyways, y'all, thank you. Again, if you know anybody, send them to the video, give them our numbers. We don't care.
Yes.
We're here. Thank you. We love you.
And good night.
And good night, or good morning.
Yeah.
Ha! I don't know how to end it.